much as whitetail management, I'm a consultant, for lack of a better term. I've got 6 properties. They total about 12,000 acres. It's high fence and free range, and I kind of oversee the whitetail management process on those properties and help implement the plan that we've come up with on those places. I work closely with the employees there. I try to develop a relationship with the guys that work there and do all the actual work, and the ones that are to thank for these gorgeous places I get to be a part of. And my goal with those guys is not just to show them how to do it, but also why we're doing it. And my long-term goal is, if I'm doing my job correctly, my role is going to be reduced over the course of time on that property as they figure out the process and how to take it over from there. I remember being in college and high school, and when I kind of knew what I wanted to do, I knew it was going to have to do with deer. And the way I looked at people that were in charge of properties that were growing really big deer or were associated with these properties was like that they had some sort of secret or some silver bullet or something that they were doing that was a guarded secret that I had to figure out. Or, you know, Daryl down the road started culling spikes, and next thing you know, every deer on his property was 150, or somebody had this new special feed, and that was it. And I can say at this point in my career, I've got a lot to learn and a long way to go, but there's no secret. It's fundamentals. It's like your 7th grade football coach told you. It's the fundamentals over and over and over again. It's implementing them properly and consistently over time that's going to get you results. The first thing I do when I start working with the landowner is I try to get them to let's set an objective. What is it that we're trying to do with this land, and what is it we're trying to do with the deer herd? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, I want to grow the biggest deer possible. And then it's my job to talk them off that ledge and make them understand the cost associated with that and some of the sacrifices that they're going to have to make if that truly is their goal. And a lot of times we step back from that goal, and it's more, you know, we consider the number of hunters that they're going to have there. A lot of them are entertaining family. A lot of them are entertaining clients, and we might not be able to have a population so low that we grow the biggest deer possible. We might have a population that's higher than that to support harvest numbers that they need to satisfy their true objectives for that property. If you'll go ahead and set what your objectives are from the get-go, it's going to save you a lot of time and hardship as you get started. Going from there, working with a property, I'd like to look at it from a weakest link standpoint. What's the weakest link? What's holding us back on this piece of property, and how do we address that problem? Sometimes we can address multiple problems at once. Sometimes the problem's so severe that we need to focus on that, and we're not going to do anything else until we get this taken care of first, because all the other efforts are going to be wasted. The number one place for everyone to start with when they're evaluating their property and trying to improve it is harvest management. That's basically, are you shooting enough deer, and are you shooting the right deer? There's absolutely no substitute for age if you're looking to increase the quality of your deer herd and looking to have more big deer on your property. You can't feed enough, you can't do enough from a habitat standpoint to make up for age. The screenshot right there, that's the trail camera surveys. This time of year, I'm staring at a computer for way longer than someone like me needs to be staring at a computer, and we're processing deer images and coming up with harvest recommendations, both for bucks and does. When I get done with a survey, I generally have an idea when I'm going through it. Man, this property's pretty impressive, or, you know, it's not very impressive. Where's the big bucks at? And every time when you get every time you get to the end of that survey, what separates a good property from a bad property, most every time it's going to be the age structure of the bucks on those properties. You start looking at a piece of property where, you know, it doesn't tail off. At 2.5, they got, you know, 3.5, 4.5. You know, it's a slight reduction in age from age class to age class. Those are the properties that have the impressive deer on them. The ones that don't, you got a ton of yearlings, and then you got about half that number of 2-year-olds, and then half again of 3-year-olds. And by the time you get to the 4 and 5, you hardly have any bucks in that population. It doesn't matter what the nutrition program is on that piece of property. They're never ever going to live up to what the property is that has a substantial older age class. As far as shooting enough deer, A doe problem's not one that you want to have. And this is something I think we've probably all been there, where we know it's good to shoot does, we know it's good to limit the population, but sometimes things are going pretty well. You know, I've got healthy deer. I don't want to blow the place up and shoot 1 million does this year. So what's the big deal? Sometimes seeing these problems at the extremes kind of helps illustrate the importance of them. And there's one property in particular I worked at in Greene County, and when we started, it was 1,500 acres. We ran the survey and came back and, you know, did the numbers, and the harvest recommendation came out at 100 does. And that was kind of a conservative harvest recommendation. That number, it's easy to say, it's easy to type into an email, all right, you got to kill 100 does. Translated into reality, it's not a fun job. It may be for the first part of it. By the end of the year, everybody's exhausted, and the landowner says, what in the world have we done to the place? You know, sounds like World War III is going on. All buck killing has been put to the side in order to accomplish this objective. The next year, they let off the gas, and we probably killed 50. Well, guess what happened year 3? We were worse off than where we started, and the number that we needed to kill was over 100 to catch back up. That's not a place you want to be. That property owner was defeated. He thought about selling the place at one point. They've gotten it under control now, and what was painfully obvious at this point, after all the efforts to get it under control, is that population of bucks looks so much better than it did when they started. And it really illustrated and hammered home the point. I never want to be there. I never want to be to where I need to go kill 100 does. Stay on top of it. Try to get a grasp of what your deer population looks like, and get some good doe harvest goals, because it's just not a problem that you want to let get out of control. One thing we're going through a lot this time of year is discussions on when do we shoot deer. Is it 4.5? Is it 5.5? Is it 6.5? Most of the time we're shooting for 5.5-year-old deer. Some of the times this goes back to objectives. When people have said, you know, I want to grow the biggest deer possible, we've tried to be cute and let them go from 5 to 6. And here's an example of some of the heartbreak that we've experienced doing that. All 3 of these deer were found dead. They were all 3 in the 170s, and all 3 of them were an attempt to get a deer to the next age class, to let them go to 6. It was cool for me. I got to find the deer. I found 2 of them and got to put my hands on them. We grew it. Wow, what an animal. It wasn't so cool for the landowner. They wanted to harvest the deer. They wanted somebody that was associated with them to be able to take it. And I can say this doesn't ring true for everybody, but the people that I work with, the clients that I work with, that's off the table. Letting them go from 5 to 6 is off the table now. Once they get to 5, they want to shoot them. This is not something they can stand. You know, once we get in debates on, is this deer 4 or 5? Should I shoot him? Should I not? All I can say is it a blow that you can't take if that deer dies? You know, the thought of finding him dead, can you stand it or not? And if you can't stand it, go ahead and put him on the harvest list and take him, because it does happen when you try to push him to older age classes. Heartbreak can be in store. On to habitat. I'm not dumb enough to sit here and preach on habitat when Dr. Chamberlain's in the same building. We're going to let him, he can speak much more intelligently on that. I will just say this, that the longer I do this, the more importance I put on habitat. It's something we hear a lot about, it's something we talk a lot about, but it's a little more obscure. It's harder to put your hands around and understand than it is, let's say, a feed or a food plot. I view it as the foundation of any deer management program. It's where we start at. And one story I have to illustrate that is a piece of property. It was 2,000 acres on the Oconee River, and it was all hardwoods. You know, when I started there, they had food plots, a feed program, and just based on that based on food plots, feed program, how much feed they went through, based on how much corn they consumed when we were doing the trail camera survey. I kind of had an idea of what I thought the deer population was there. After the survey came back, the deer population was less than half of what I had estimated it at, just riding around. And what was happening is it was all closed canopy hardwoods. They didn't have anything to eat in the forest floor. And they were hammering all the food sources that we were providing and having an outsized effect on those food sources. The cure there was that hardwood was merchantable, and I talked the landowner into parting with some of it, and we did a lot of different patch clear cuts throughout it and got some browse for them, and we were in a situation where we could start letting the population grow after that. But it just hammered home the importance of habitat. And it's something again, that would be my first consideration on any property, is make sure that we're covering our bases there before we get to work on anything else. Food plots. There's a lot of debate, you hear numbers, 5%, 10%. How much do you need in food plots? How much of your acreage needs to be in food plots? It's absolutely property specific. It's deer density specific. And one of the main things is how good a farmer are you? I know some properties that maybe have 4 or 5% in food plots, and those guys can do a really good job of maximizing each acre of that ground, and they can get away with far less than the people that aren't so good at it. There's some people that devote one plot to something that's only good for the deer for 2 months over here, and one plot over here that they're only going to eat on for another different 2 months out of the year. And you start taking up acreage like that, and you need a lot more acreage to feed them. My goal is to maximize food production for as long as possible on each acre of that property. The way I view food plots and what deer need, this is an oversimplification, but if you view it this way, it'll help you understand how to think about it. Fall and winter, they need carbohydrates. The most efficient way to get them that in food plots is cereal grains. There's other options. This is what I do, and I'm keeping it simple here. In the summertime, spring, summer, they need protein. That's clovers, alfalfa, and soybeans. That's what the places I'm working on, that's what they're relying on. Everything here, the cereal grains and the clovers, we grow those together in the same plot, and they're all planted in the fall. Even though that clover's not having value till the spring and summer, it's planted in the fall. Same with the alfalfa, it's established in the fall and should last 4 or 5 years. Even though it's established in the fall, that value to the deer is going to be that following spring and summer. Right here's a food plot on the left-hand side. That's what it looks like in late winter. The cereal grains are coming up, and the deer don't need them anymore. They're switched over to protein food sources. On the right, that's after we came in there and sprayed to terminate the cereal grains. We spray it with a chemical called clethodim. We hit the clover with some more phosphorus and potassium, and the clover takes off. You can actually see in that field, I was taking a picture to send to a guy that was working for me at the time to pick on him about missing some streaks out there, but you could see the cereal grains where the clethodim missed. And you go up and look in those cereal grains, and the clover's not doing near as well as it is where we sprayed. So that's alfalfa on the right. On the left is fenced soybean patch. This is something we've started doing in the past 3 or 4 years and has helped us tremendously. The biggest gap that I have in our food plot program is late summer. It's July, August, September. Is how do we get deer food during those months? Our clover's not looking good, our alfalfa's mowed down, and fenced soybeans are the #1 thing that I can think of. Why do we fence them? Well, you don't have to, but you got to have a ton of acreage if you're not. Most of us don't have that much acreage. I mean, we've got some big food plots at these places I'm working at. We still don't have enough acreage to do unfenced soybeans. So what we do is we plant the soybeans, we put up an electric fence around them, let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks. Once the soybeans get to rocking and rolling, take the fence down and let the deer in there. The hope is that our clover plots have done well enough that they were on the clover until we take the fence down, and then they go into the beans. Sometimes we fail at this. Sometimes we don't get 12 months worth of food out of the soybeans, and that's kind of where the supplemental feeding comes in and can be our insurance policy. One more thing on how to think about food plots is you hear a lot that ag is great for deer, that ag grows big deer. I can show you some places where we have a lot of ag around home that have pretty pitiful deer herds. And what's happening there is it's feast or famine. They've got a lot to eat sometimes a year, and they don't have anything to eat the rest of the year. That's not what deer need to reach their genetic potential. It's got to be 365 days a year, and that's how you have to think about it. You got to find the missing pieces of that puzzle, the times a year where they're stressed and don't have food, and that's where you need to put your efforts. On our family place, I have a little bitty budget compared to all these other places, and we have to allocate our resources as efficiently as possible to get done what we want to do. We have a ton of ag, so my food plot program is, what I try to do is have food for them in the fall and the winter, and then I let the ag take care of the spring and the summer. I try to figure out what the farmer's growing and know what's going to be where so that I can fill in the gaps and piggyback off of him. But you just cannot be solely reliant just because you have ag around you. It will not move the needle if you're not doing something else to fill in those gaps. Finally, supplemental feed. I'd be amiss to not mention it. It doesn't work. I'm just kidding, Bruce. There's different schools of thought. There's some guys that feed during the spring and summer. I'm adamant about feeding 365 days of the year. And the reason being is to habituate deer to those feeders. I know, guys, if y'all have started a feed program, and you run cameras on those feeders and then turn around and run cameras on corn on the ground, you're going to notice that there's a good deal of your bucks that don't initially eat out of those feeders, and it takes a little while to habituate them to it. Over the course of time, the longer you feed, the longer those deer, the more those deer will get used to going to those feeders, and that's my number one argument for keeping them full 365. I want them to know that they can come back there and rely on those feeders when they need to. My computer died, it's okay. Lastly, the hardest part of deer management, I promise it's not rocket science. What I do is very basic, and the hardest part of all of it is people management. And that's at every level. Some of the bigger places I work at, that's all my problems are people problems. It's dealing with employees, it's dealing with owners, and I'm a psychologist most days. I'm not a deer management guy. The success of those places depends on putting the right people in the right spot from the landowners. In their relationships that they can build, the relationships that they build with their employees, putting the right guy in the right position. And for most of us, the people problems that we run into are, the people that hunt the property with us and the people that hunt the property next to us. The best investment time-wise that I've made on our own personal property is going to neighbors and talking to them and developing relationships with those guys and letting them know exactly what we're doing. I'll take the biggest deer we got a picture of and go show it to them and say, this is what I'm hunting this year. And 9 times out of 10, those folks say, I didn't know we had deer like that around there. And once they realize that, they're far more apt to stop shooting small deer when they have hope that there are bigger ones there. That's been my experience. I know there's a lot of people that keep big deer close to their vest. I like to share. We've probably put 5,000 acres worth together around where I hunt of like-minded people, and that's just from sharing information with one another and talking to one another and cooperating, and that's got us all moving in the same direction. Also on people management, it's a lot of us deal with friends and family and customers, entertaining customers and different folks on your property. And how do you communicate? How do you educate them on what to shoot and what not to shoot? And how do you communicate that to them in the stand? That's the hardest part of all this, is dealing with that. And what I would say is I don't have an answer on how to deal with all that, but what I would say is the people that I know that have been the most successful at deer management also know how to manage people and invest a lot in people. Lastly, don't take this too seriously. I had a picture I was going to put up here of some kids that come hunting with us every year from Hunt for the Cure. And those hunts and the deer, those bucks that those kids have killed with us are the ones that I remember, and they're by far the most special to me. We get wrapped up in growing big deer. I work at some places where we're really uptight about it. And to see those kids come in and just tell them to go out, you can shoot whatever, it'll change your perspective on it and make you say, hey, this isn't a big deal, you know. This is fun. This is fun, and that's why we all got into hunting, is because it was just fun and excitement. My best advice is, if you're serious about deer management, just don't get so serious that it takes the fun out of it, because that can happen, and that's not what it's all about. The people that I know that have been most fulfilled through the deer management process on managing their land are ones that have figured out how to share it, whether that's with family and friends or organizations like Hunt for the Cure. Figure out how to share it, and you'll be much happier in the long run with what you got. Thank you, guys. I can answer questions up here, or I can talk to you out there, whatever y'all prefer. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, that's good. Lastly, I almost missed this. Thank you. It was on my slideshow, but I'll blame it on that. As far as relationships go, 4S, they didn't tell me to say this. They handle everything as far as seed, feed, on our properties that I work with, and they have been a huge asset to me. They, you know, I could be super late on a seed order and call them and say I need an absurd amount of seed, and no complaints, we'll get it to you. And all my clients would say the same thing. These guys are an asset for us, and they get us what we need when we need it, and they have streamlined a lot of it, a lot of the process for us. That's it. Thank you guys very much.